The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
What's working on purpose anyway? Each week, we ponder the answer to this question. People ache for meaning and purpose at work, to contribute their talents passionately and know their lives really matter. They crave being part of an organization that inspires them and helps them grow into realizing their highest potential. Business can be such a force for good in the world, elevating humanity. In our program, we provide guidance and inspiration to help usher in this world we all want, working on purpose. Now, here's your host, Dr. Elise Cortez.
Welcome back to the Working on Purpose program, which has been brought to you with passion and pride since February of 2015 already. Thanks for tuning in again this week. Great to have you. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. If we have not met before and you don't know me, I'm a workforce advisor, organizational psychologist, management consultant, logotherapist, speaker, and author. My team and I at Nnennaya help companies to enliven and fortify their operations by building a dynamic, high-performance culture, inspirational leadership, and nurturing managers activated by meaning and purpose. And did you know that inspired employees outperform their satisfied peers by a factor of 2.25 to 1? In other words, inspiration is good for the bottom line. You can learn more about us and how we can work together at gusto-now.com or my personal site, elisecortez.com. We have with us today two amazing women. We have Funke Michaels, a dynamic leader with a rich cultural heritage, seamlessly blends her Nigerian and Kenyan roots with global perspectives. As an MIT Sloan Fellow and Harvard Mason Fellow, Funke remains committed to fostering development through academia, entrepreneurship, and innovation, making her a sought-after voice in international forums and educational settings. She joined today from Newcastle in the United Kingdom. Also with us is Absa Gningue. She is a seasoned entrepreneur and technology enthusiast with global leadership experience. She's the Senior Innovation Platform Officer at the African Development Bank, where she manages the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Lab. She's also the founder of GEDER, a do bank. I love that. Do bank, not a think tank, but a do bank, empowering growth entrepreneurship in 25 plus African countries. She's also a content creator behind Productivity Planners, Serendipity, and Spiritualities podcasts, showcasing her dedication to innovation, education, and social change in Africa. She joins us today from Senegal, Dakar. Ladies, a hearty welcome to Working on Purpose. I'm so happy to have you both.
Yay. Thank you.
Slightly enthusiastic to have you here. Now let's celebrate this beautiful thing that the two of you brought into the world. Look at this beautiful book. It's gorgeous. We'll get into more of really why I think it's so clever and special and distinctive as we go. But let's just first let our listeners and viewers who haven't met you or known you quite yet the way that I have, just get a little bit of glimpse of each of your backgrounds. If you could just talk a bit about your early work, your leadership experiences, and why they contributed to you wanting to write a book that is anchored in what we can learn from Mother Nature.
I always say that I've been fortunate to work with amazing women. And our presence here is a testament to that, because I used to work with Absa. We worked together on the team at Samsung. And learning from people is the key to leadership, really. No matter where you find yourself, whether you're sitting on the floor of the market in Kano, or you're sitting in a boardroom presenting, your brand's plan for the next year, you need to understand people. And I believe that all the places I've worked in, at one point or the other, I have been fortunate enough to be in the company of amazing women. They've held my hand. They've given me shoulders to lean on. They've given me shoulders to climb on to get ahead. Many of them are lifetime friends, as well, Absa's here to testify. So I think that for me, this book came out of what I've seen, what I've received, and what I sought to give. Every class that I taught, I looked up for women like myself, people who wanted to do something and do it differently. And I think that's why Absa and I became friends, because I walked into the office and I saw someone that I could relate with. And it makes all the difference in the world.
Sure does.
Yeah, and echoing what Funke just said, there is an amazing journey that we also need to start developing right now. It's that inner conversation with oneself.
Thank
As
you.
women, should we be in business or as a mother or as a woman or as a wife, we tend to doubt a lot. And I think it's always good to be reminded of how strong we are. And that inner conversation needs to start early enough because at no point of time at school or even within our own families, we're told or reminded that we need to have that conversation with ourselves to be appreciated. And it's a tough conversation, by the way, and you'll discover that in the book, but it starts with that beautiful, if I were to use that analogy with the mother nature, the caterpillar transformation is very tough. It's not easy.
Right.
We see the butterfly and all, but it requires that we ask ourselves the real question. And I hope we'll have the opportunity during this podcast to also develop few of the techniques we've used during that journey, Funke and I, and that we are mentioning in the book.
Mm. I want to celebrate something that's in your book as well that I just experienced as well last week. I had the opportunity to MC a women's conference called Thrive in 25. It was in Chicago last week. And our keynote speaker is a woman named Erin Gallagher. And her whole thing is she has a book coming out in October called Hype Women. And it's something about spearheading the karma economy. And essentially what she's putting forth is, we as women have an opportunity to support each other and also to influence each other in terms of how it is we choose, with whom we choose to do business. And when we choose to do business to support other women, now we strengthen their economies and give a greater voice to them. And I think that also speaks to a lot of the spirit of what I got from your book. Yes?
Volume.
Well, more to come on Erin Gallagher. She's amazing. Okay, so one of the things that I thought was really interesting, Absa, you talk about when you were working at P&G, it was an extraordinary experience for you. And you said it was one of your very first journeys through human capital development. And I really appreciated, because I do so much work helping organizations build their culture and their leadership, that they had a motto that they really stood behind, that really meant something to you and shaped you. And that motto was promises made, promises kept.
Yep.
Can you
Yep.
how that experience formed you and why it was so important to you?
No, starting with P&G, and first of all, I've had the chance, it was an extreme honor of working for companies that are centuries, right? 100 years and above, which means that ethically, we're talking about sustainability. And working for P&G has been an extraordinary experience. My very first journey as a professional, and I get in that office and I see that, this sentence, promises made, promises kept. To me, it didn't mean much until I started embracing the values of the company. It went beyond a motto, really. It was really, it was not a slogan. It was something I really wanted to live by. And I saw how the company was honoring commitments and how we were developing people, how beside the fact that we were trying to sell something, we were also trying to have a huge sense of responsibility in the countries that we were covering. And for me, it goes back to that connection I was talking about. How do you connect to values and purpose? These values that drive you in a way or in a context that you can even strive beyond the storms and few of the crises that you might be going through. And for me, it was important because I was extremely young when I joined Procter & Gamble. And that's how my leadership journey started, with integrity and commitment. And now that I'm working for the public sector, I'm dealing with government. Now more than ever, I can really value the sense of having promises made, promises kept, even to the citizens that we're trying to serve in the countries and the governments we're trying to support. And life is all about that at the end of the day. If we don't have values, if we don't nurture ethics in this world, so what do we have at the end of the day?
I really got it as a through line. This is like the heartbeat of the company that you all could feel connected to. It informed how your heart actually worked.
Yep.
And I think that's so powerful. And I just couldn't help starting our conversation by celebrating that, because so many organizations are missing that, and they have an opportunity to create that anchoring force the way you experienced it, Absa.
Absolutely.
And I don't know which of the two of you this was. I think it might be you too, Absa, but that whole story that you talk about, and this is the value, this is the other thing about, pulling from talent from across the globe that has had wildly diverse experiences in their work experiences, how they grew up. But that story of, working in this city for your new job and then being under your bed because there was a robbery going on next door. Your mother actually called and you were, sly enough to be able to, not to concern her and just simply pass it off as fireworks. And you say that it really forged you as a leader and made you tough. I should say, who was that? Which of you, with the two of you, was that experience?
That was me again.
Yeah, okay.
The reason why this story is quite funny is because I was telling her and she was laughing about it again and saying, you're not serious. But to be very honest, I think what it tells us is that we will have to leave tough situations. And going through the storm, as Funke was mentioning, we tend to, with the social media, to put it all out, right? Living in a sense of drama, let me make it concerning so that people can get pity on me and I'll be the show in the town. Here it was a bit different. I was going through a situation which I know that if I was to tell my mom, she would just ask me, oh girl, take the first plane and get back home.
Right.
But I was like, she's my support system as of today, by the way. But I'm learning to take care of her emotions the way I would want her to take care of mine. And it goes back to that exchange between women. We don't necessarily want to hurt. We don't necessarily want to be in a position where I'm adding a burden on your shoulder as my sister. I want to be a relief. And
I have to say, Absa, before you continue, pardon me for interrupting you. What you experienced that evening, that was my life growing up. That's my city. The city that forged me.
Wow.
So it takes a lot to scare me because that was our normal. So by the time I met Absa, she was so Nigerian that we could converse. And we could converse in several languages and people couldn't tell the difference because we could make the same references. She could talk about places in my city, I could talk about places in her city. And that helped us to work together over the years. And I'm talking almost 20 years now, right?
Absolutely. And that chapter, when I'm starting by telling the story and by saying that I needed my mom to be there for me. So if I was to scare her, no one would listen to me when I would come and cry at the end of the day. So I needed to keep her safe so that when I'm coming back in the evening, tired, sick and tired and really willing to get out of this town, she would still be there, calm and quiet enough to, bring me back to where I needed to be. So I needed her to be 100% available for me. So I needed to protect her. Now, the other side of the story that Funke has brilliantly presented, and I wanted to invite her at some point, I learned to be agile. When I came back in Dakar, I came with an accent, an English accent. They call it broken English because I had to break my perfect, UK style of English. And my manager called me, Absa, I want to see you. I say, okay, Anas Mutawakil, I'm saying hi, by the way. He said, this won't work. I said, what wouldn't work? Say, the way you're speaking. I said, how am I speaking? You're speaking English or something, but we don't get it. Remember, I live in Dakar, so it's a Francophone country. I literally had to adapt and forget about my English, my French, and embrace agility, embrace the culture that I was living in order to be able to survive. Did I like it? Not at all. Did I do the job? Of course I did. So that's why I came back home with all the glory and all the status, but it was tough. And that paragraph is meant to teach us that for us to be able to surrender and be agile, we need to protect our support system, my mom in this case, but we need to be agile and embrace the environment that we're living in.
That is so powerful, Absa. So powerful. And then I want to take it another step further and just situate. I want to read from a little bit from the foreword of your book here, because I want our listeners and viewers to understand just how much richness and depth your book and its content pulls on. So I want to read that really quick for our leaders or our listeners and viewers, and then let one of you or both of you comment on it. This is from Amina Gurib Fakim. She is a PhD, and she's the president of, or maybe the former president of, the Republic of Mauritius. She says, I have always been passionate about sustainable development and women empowerment. I have used my scientific background to add value to our rich heritage that has been handed over to us by our elders. Phototherapy, medicinal plants, especially indigenous ones in our region, and our unique biodiversity have all helped to forge my career pathway. I've always believed in operating at the intersection of science, environment, and leadership, and this is the reason why I believe that this book provides invaluable insights for any woman seeking to develop her leadership journey. It offers a refreshing perspective on how aligning with nature can inspire authenticity, innovation, and a deeper connection to both ourselves and the world around us. That is so incredibly beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, and we're also taking this opportunity to thank her because, I've had the privilege and the honor of meeting also. I was posting it on LinkedIn this morning. Mrs. Ellen Sirleaf Johnson, Her Excellence, she was the very first woman president in Africa. The way also Mrs. Amina Gurib Fakim has also paved the way in Mauritius. And what it tells us is that we have something in common. Should we be women in power, women in leadership, women leading in general, we have that inner sense of responsibility, and we are driven by purpose. And I love the podcast. I'm like, this is exactly the podcast we need to be part of.
Right.
We work in purpose, and that's part of who we are, our identity as women. And if there is one thing I would want our listeners to think about and start thinking about as we go through this podcast is, how can I develop that inner strength in me? That deep power I have that is just waiting to be awakened and to be understood or to be utilized, that is sleeping now. And I think Funke had the same aha moment when we decided to write this book. And thank you to Venicia Gino, the lady who introduced us to Her Excellence Amina Gurib Fakim.
I have to say that writing that book was not deliberate. It was a rather difficult time for me. I had packed up my family. We left Boston in the US and we moved to Kenya to do two things. I'd written an agricultural education policy strategy document during my Harvard days with the guidance of one of my professors whom we have lost now, and it's still very, very painful to us. Callistus Juma was his name. And Callistus encouraged me to go back to Kenya. When we went back, we didn't anticipate the antagonism that we were going to meet when we got there. And so we essentially lost everything. And in that moment, I realized that losing that investment, and we took our 401k, we took everything. Wow. It set us at a point where we needed to understand that this was a paradigm shift. We could not use Harvard knowledge. We couldn't use MIT technology here. We had come to the land and we had to pay respects to the land and its people, understand its culture before we could begin to build. We needed to make that social foundation first. So then I decided to take my skills and invest them in the people. I went to teach, and technically I taught for free. While teaching, I met people who were entrepreneurs, young starters, restarters, upscalers, and they would ask for help. They couldn't afford marketing help, but I gave it to them. Now, at least some of these people would come and pay me in yogurt, in kegs of yogurt, in onions, in corn, in potatoes.
Sure.
And they were always welcome at my home. I had Masais who would bring me fresh milk. They'd bring it in the mornings. And I got a community. I got people. I became a Kenyan. It became possible for me to start to build. And I began to build around that knowledge. When I began to teach people, by the time COVID-19 happened and we were all grounded, I had already been teaching online for about 2 years. And in that time, I was able to gather all of these things into pieces that were, well, they made sense to me, but they also needed to make sense to someone else who would get me and whom I needed to complete this. And that woman was Absa. Because during that time, I was also gathering women together and helping them raise funds to keep their businesses alive in rural Africa. So if you had a business that was supported by your community, you could come on that platform and we would vote and give you $500. And to many people, it was a lot of money. So Absa came on and she wowed everyone. She didn't just give the $500 for that session. She also gave them knowledge. She took these women onto Jeddah and she transformed many mindsets. Even today, there are women that are in our network from that group. Now, this brought all of that those ideas together. And so we sat down and I would write and send it to Absa. She would fill up and send it back to me. I'd be like, oh, wow. And then I'd write some more and then I'd send it back to her. And she'd be like, oh, yeah, we forgot to put that. And then she'd send it back. It was such fun to do this work. While we were doing it, we were also having children. And at some point, moving countries. It's taken us 3 years to get to this point, 3 excruciatingly painful for both of us in certain ways, yet very happy years, because this book is like a child in and of itself. It's seeing it develop and form and be birthed and be seen and being appreciated.
Oh, that is so beautiful. I'm so grateful to know both of you. Let us grab our first break and let our listeners and viewers just let it sink in just really who it is that they're keeping company with for this particular almost hour. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We've been on air with Funke Michaels and also Absa Gningue. They're 2 dynamic women who have been up to all kinds of things in their decades-long careers and are tapping into some really amazing knowledge and expertise that we're going to learn more about as we go along in the show. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, as I am dedicated to helping create a world where organizations thrive because their people thrive and they're led by inspirational leaders that help them find and contribute their greatness. And we do business that betters the world. I keep researching and writing my own books. So one of my latest came out. It's called The Great Revitalization, How Activating Meaning and Purpose Can Radically Enliven Your Business. And I wrote it to help leaders understand the lay of today's very diverse and discerning workforce. What do they want and need to give you their best and want to stick around? And then I give you 22 best practices to fold into your culture to create that for them. You can find my books on Amazon or my personal site, elisecortez.com. If you're just now joining us, my guests are Funke Michaels and Absa Gningue. They are the authors of Modern Leadership Inspired by Mother Nature. So on that note, I really want to applaud you, as I did just before we got on air together, I'm so delighted by the unique way that you've crafted your book and the message in it. And you're celebrating, or I'm celebrating with you, this idea of learning and leading toward aspirational leadership. And so you provide an awful lot of different personas, perspectives, scenarios in your book. And then you also situate them around, I think it's 10 different animals. And then each of your chapters then has 5 key learnings that you can apply to remember and incorporate this in your everyday life. It's so clever and so unique. So I just want to start by celebrating that. Where did this idea come from? Why would you go about this?
I'm a teacher's daughter.
Okay.
His granddaughter. And I was taught things by 5s because it helps with strategy and with planning.
Yes.
5-year plans times 2, the 10-year plan. It's easy for a child to learn things in 5s. And if a child can remember, a grown-up can remember. Now, Absa should take all of the credit for the work in that workbook because she's done something similar with Jeddah. It was easy for her to transfer that skill and distill from everything we've written together the key lessons and then put them in such a way that for those who've read the book and just, read through it, they can take the workbook and work through it. So we find ourselves straddling 2 horses very beautifully. You have the easy read, but you also have those who are serious and want to do some work with this. For them, that workbook is like a strategy template that you can use to develop your own strategy.
And I think Funke is completely right. It always helps to come back and see who you were 5 years ago.
Yeah.
The purpose of it all is also to compile it all. So on the website that you're seeing on the banner here, we've compiled them all for you to be able, after reading the book, to come back again, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years time, 10 years time, and check the answers you had given back then and see how you are growing up. Because at a starting point, I was mentioning the importance of having that inner conversation with yourself without fear, without questions, without judgment, but just yourself asking yourself simple questions and responding to them. And there is that funny thing, and we'll come to that. When you mentioned the 10 personas, a lady came to me and said, "This book is just transgenerational." I'm like, "What do you mean?" She said, "I went through the book and I thought I was done with it. But my daughter, she has 3 daughters, came in and started coloring the personas."
Fantastic.
Yeah, and then the 2 other daughters starting competing, and now they asked to their mother to explain what the book was about.
Wow.
And she's telling me now, see me going through the book and now explaining what the book is to my daughters. I'm like, wow, I could have ever imagined that. This book could speak to different generations all at the same time. And it comes partially, I guess, from the relationship we have, Funke and I. You won't feel the age difference. But what she didn't mention is that it's also a call for sorority, because she was my second line manager. And that's the crazy part. No, the crazy part of it. I'm like, well, we knew each other because she was sitting in South Africa. I was sitting in Senegal. We were both working for a Korean company. You'll see what's the name of the company. Then now I'm sitting in Pretoria, South Africa, and she's sitting in the UK. But 2 lessons here. Number 1, what it does take from a manager to recognize the value of people she works with. It's not very common. So I think it's something commendable that we need to remind. And the second thing is sorority. It was not easy to work together, really. Had my priorities, she had her. I'm like, Frank, you know what? We gotta finish this book, girl. We are going to finish this book. I no excuse. I don't want to hear anything. You're stubborn. I'm stubborn. I've been in Nigeria. You will finish this book. And there were challenges, health issues here. when I was promoting the book, I was heavily pregnant. She was at the hospital. It was kind of a crazy environment. But I think it's also important in each of these personas to see that sorority is also important and humility is important in the learning path.
Yeah. And was that you, Funke, who drove yourself to the hospital to deliver your child? You were at Harvard and you're like, I don't want to disrupt anything. I don't want to disrupt anything. I got this. You're in labor and driving yourself. Yeah. Okay. Guilty as
I was the
charged.
leader of twin girls. They'll be 11 in about a month. And they did read the book, actually.
And they're beautiful.
We have that conversation because at the age that they're at now, I began my womanhood training. And I was raised by a griot and a sage who raised me in 5 languages. She was my paternal grandmother, and she sat on the seat of Yeyami in her generation. So for many reasons, we are trained beyond our academic qualifications, Absa and I. And these things pass on to our children. And incidentally, to those around us, one way or the other. If you're friends with me or you're my colleague, you will find that my culture will touch you one way or the other beautifully.
This is so stunning. I know I'm never going to let you two go, but let's do this. Let's take our last break now, because I want to finish the conversation by really focusing on just some of the beautiful gems about what we can learn from the different animals that you showcase in your book. It's just so beautiful. So let's grab our last break really quick. I'm Dr. Elise Cortez. We've been on the air with Funke Michaels and Absa Gningue. We've been talking a bit about just the richness of what informs this book's message and their own experiences, and really the idea of we're empowering women. We're helping to develop a sorority for them to connect into and grow from and draw strength from. So after the break, we're going to take you into this very rich experience of how they have derived key learnings for aspirational leadership from the various animals that they showcase. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Welcome back to the Working on Purpose program. This is Elise Cortez, your host. As you know by now, that this program is dedicated to empowering and inspiring you along your journey to realize more of your potential. If you want to learn more about how we can work together and see into about the Gusto Now Academy, which we've just now stood up, you can go to gusto-now.com and then go to the training tab to learn more about the Academy and what we're doing there. If you are just joining us, my guests are Funke Michaels and Absa Gningue. They're the authors of Modern Leadership Inspired by Mother Nature, which is what we're going to talk about next. So we have to first talk about the unassuming bee. And I like how you really focus on what we can learn from bees in terms of their cooperation, which is not competitive, and also the way they use information.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I believe that, sorry, Absa, darling, were you going to go ahead?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I believe that my first conscious lesson in cooperation came from MIT. And Stephen Saka was the name of my director during the Sloan Fellows program. So Stephen Saka looked at 100+ young, unimaginably smart people. If you thought you were smart, you got into that class and you got quiet because these were smart people. And he said to us, you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You're here to learn to cooperate with one another. So it's not about competition. It's about cooperation, because you cannot influence and affect the world if you do not cooperate with one another. It doesn't matter how brilliant you are. If you can't work together, then the world is in trouble. And so we've taken that, in that analogy, we found the bees, they have such seamless hierarchy. And everyone knows what everyone needs to do, and everyone supports the other. It's what Absa was talking about in this sense of sorority. Now, when I was during my Harvard degree period, I had to decide whether I was going to go to school or be a mother, and it was not an easy decision to make. My husband was working full time, and I had to go to school full time because you don't do half classes with Harvard. But my father came through for us. My dad flew in from Nigeria. He took care of my son, who at that time was 9, and he took care of the babies when they came. So I wasn't just driving to the hospital. I was driving to the hospital with my father sitting next to me. At that time, he was in his mid-70s, and he was with me all the way as I was wheeled in before my husband arrived. In that pot were my classmates as well. I am talking about dozens of people who came together and cooked in their homes as their families, and then brought the food every single day so that I didn't have to worry about cooking. In fact, we had friends who would just call and say, "What do you guys feel like for next week?" And that's the kind of support that helped me to get through a rigorous Harvard degree with 3 children, 2 of whom happened to be preemie twins, because the twins came prematurely. We had no breaks, we had no holidays, we took care of our babies. And we were only able to do it because we lived like a hive. Our neighbors, our friends, we had caretakers, caregivers everywhere. My classmates would come to the house and come wash babies and feed them and do laundry. It was a beautiful time. It could only have been that way because we were bees.
Yeah. No, that's beautifully said. And while going through this chapter, I think it's important to ask yourself 2 questions. Who are you nurturing, and who nurtured you?
Yeah.
As women, I'm an advocate of women empowerment, but I need to face the truth.
Yeah.
Most of us women do not support other women.
Unfortunately.
And it's just the brutal truth, and we need to accept it. I do accept the truth. That's how I get, to perform and to succeed in what I'm doing. And the truth is that it's not common to see women supporting women. And after this chapter, the reason why I'm mentioning specifically the Nana Benz story, I consider them as an icon. Nana Benz were saleswomen in Togo, and they were called Benz because, they were driving Mercedes Benz, and I'm explaining the whole story, but they did write history in the sense that they were one of the first women becoming entrepreneurs in Africa. And having that power and that empowerment, we are really trying to build again decades after, their generation has done. And to me, if after this paragraph, the listener, or I'm saying the listener, but the reader is able to identify 2 or 3 people they're supporting, and 2 or 3 people they've supported, or mentors and mentees type of relationship, it would be amazing, because we don't take enough time to recognize the ones who did lift us up. And as women, we need to identify them and say, oh, you know what? Dr. Alice gave me that opportunity when I needed it the most. So I'm grateful.
Thank you, Alice.
And we also need to be able, the way Funke was also telling that story of the women we supported with $500 in mentorship, to say, I don't remember everyone. To be very honest, we are thousands and thousands of volunteers, and Jeter has supported such a lot of people starting the age of 8 so that they can grow up with that entrepreneurial mindset. I can't recognize them all, and they can recognize me when I'm, going out on TV, etc. But what to keep in mind is this: impact sustains, it remains. They'll never ever forget. They will never, ever forget. And if they're able to have that ripple effect, and that's why we're talking about the hive and how structured the hive is, how structured it is that I'm not competing with you. You're good at what you're doing. I am your first supporter, but recognize that I'm also good in what I'm doing and support me when I need you. So that's the type of message we want to drive in this specific paragraph.
I think that one thing, sorry, Elise, if I could just quickly add, one thing that we've noticed is that people, because we speak as women and we address a primarily feminine audience, people assume that we're speaking only to women, but we're not. The truth is, I am who I am because I am my father's daughter. This is how he raised me to be. And it's the same thing with Absa because I know her story. In spite of the fact that we're from matrilineal families and from very strong matriarchal communities, we are our father's daughters. It takes a man to stand behind a young woman and say, this one, let's go. I'm right behind you. And she'll have that confidence. So I ask people, don't wait until it's your daughter. It could be your niece. It could be the girl next door. It could be, someone at church, someone at school. Give a girl some steel in her spine. She'll not forget it. And you'll be helping the world.
Yeah. And that's why we start with bees and we slightly move to the next animal. That's the ant. Yeah. Amazing animal.
Well, I learned so much about nature, and I revere nature too. But just a couple things about the ant that I thought were interesting. Just I love that the message in there that you are not too small, and that ants can carry things on their head, and they can carry 4 times their weight. Yep. It just all kinds of amazing things that you think about this little humble ant can do. So let's hear a bit about what we can learn from the ant.
I think for me, the biggest thing is the sharing. The fact that I can regurgitate of my knowledge, of my financial power, of my counsel, good advice, the benefits and harvests of my education, and I can share those with my sisters. Now, because I often say this to women that I meet, because people like myself have walked through doors like MIT and Harvard, the rest of you who are home can also walk through. So we have come with all that we've learned because Absa has walked in all of these places and learned from all of these places and gained all of this knowledge. Those who come behind also have it because she does. If we are the ants that we're supposed to be, then what I have learned is what you have learned. It should then benefit us. It should be a quantum benefit to all of us who are within this ecosystem.
And really 2 lessons here, really echoing what Funke has just said. You're not too small means don't let people to judge you based on what you look like physically or what you think, or there is no ridiculous idea. I'm into innovation, and what I learned first was there is no good or bad idea. There are just ideas that you can turn into something amazing or into impact. That's one. So don't worry about how you're seen. You are as great as you see yourself when you look at yourself in the mirror. You're not too small. And the second lesson, when we started with the bees, we did put an emphasis on the importance of identifying who is doing what, the structure, who is in charge of what, who is good at what, who is weak at what. Here, the lesson is to measure the weight of the burden from it yourself to carry, so that you know what this one can take. You remember the support system with my mother? Yeah. I know what she can carry. She can't carry hearing, guns around her daughter. So I was like, let me handle that part that I know I can still keep on my shoulders, and let me ask her to do the rest, meaning to remind me of why I am in this journey, to keep cheerleading me. It's important. We carry too much on our shoulders, and we tend to forget to find a leading hand or someone who can really support us.
So powerful, ladies. And we, of course, there was 10 different animals that you showcased, and we only talked about 2 so far. I have to talk about octopus, and if we have time, owls, a bit about each, because those are 2 animals that I just really, really revere. Which one would you like to talk about? Owls or octopus?
I'll take the owl. I'll let Absa take the octopus.
Okay.
Because she has the 3 hearts of the octopus, and I have the sight of the owl.
Okay.
Now, the owl is my favorite of all of this because from times before us, the owl has been revered as a symbol of wisdom, of foresight, of knowledge beyond the ordinary, of ability to, swivel that neck and see all around you. And these are gifts that Mother Nature made to the owl for a particular reason, because the owl straddles both the day and the night. This is the character that I see wherever I might find myself. Whether it's a bright sunny meadow or it's in the dark of the valley, I need to understand that my sight allows me to see beyond where I'm at and zero in on what I want to achieve and achieve it by focusing on it. Now, what do I do differently? I surround myself with owl-like people who can also see and who can tap in when they don't see, but they see that I see. They can tap into my sight and get to see what I'm looking at. Now, I believe that the perfect example is when I first met Absa, she didn't know what kind of person I was going to end up being. But I knew the kind of person she was going to end up being because I could see the beginning of that amazing person. And today, I feel I've been proven right. Everything I've seen and watched her do, and I've watched her over the years, sometimes in her face, telling her, you need to do this, you need to finish this, you need to sign up for this. And sometimes just behind, just, chilling. And sometimes I'm the predictor. I say to her, this is going to happen to you. and she's amazed because it does happen. Now, I need people like that around me who can key into my dream and into whose dreams I can also key in. And this is where it comes, it becomes from inside of one to the outside of all. I'll let her take the octopus from there.
Perfect. Yeah. And we've got maybe 2 minutes max, maybe a minute and a half. Yes.
Perfect. Now, the owl is my best friend's favorite animal. I've never understood that. And I got to love the owl thanks to Funke. But she's completely right. With octopuses, I wanted to explain how we as women were very unique in our way of feeling things. Octopuses have 3 hearts. So sometimes we love something, sometimes we don't, sometimes we hate it. We're not easy to understand. But that's what is the beauty of us being as a whole, with our 9 brains as octopuses. The very important point here is really to learn to understand your emotional intelligence. The whole paragraph is about emotional intelligence. And I had someone phoning me today and saying, this octopuses chapter, that paragraph. I went through it and I read it again and I went back and read. I'm like, I asked you 3 weeks ago, you were still at this octopus. What's wrong? And she said, whenever I'm reading it, I'm having a post-it and I'm explaining a story of me doing something I didn't understand. And now I understand why I'm doing it. I'm just an octopus. I'm like, okay. So the beauty of it is also to understand that emotional intelligence doesn't happen overnight. You need to call the experts. You need to call people like, and I love what you're doing with Gusto now, Dr. Ali. That's exactly it. That's how do you pick within the personalities that you have, what to strengthen, what to develop, how to level up the strength that you have, and, evolve into a community, but also as a human being. It's important that you know what you want to do in your career, and that starts now. And it's important that you start nurturing that emotional intelligence.
This is so beautiful, ladies. I could go on and on. Let's do this. Let's let each of you just close with a little something that you each want to share, say in about 15, 20 seconds.
Woo, Funke.
Right. This is a class I teach. For me, life is about legacies. It's about the stories that reached into me and got me where I am today. And the stories that come from within me and will get other people to where they're going tomorrow. I believe that for each one of us, especially those who actually pick up this book and read it, we will realize that we're on a journey. And this journey is the most beautiful one that we could ever be on. It's the journey of life. And Mother Nature is giving it to us. So that's my little piece.
Beautiful.
Oh, beautiful. No, I'll leave them with 3 verbs, really. 3 simple verbs. Align, adapt, amplify. Align with yourself. Adapt with the ecosystem. And amplify your impact so that it's a ripple effect. It's just not you. It's so many, many, many other people around you.
Oh, Funke, Absa, it is such a complete delight to know both of you, to have been inspired by you, to be educated by you. I thank you so much for coming on Working in Purpose and sharing who you are and what you've learned over your decades of life. It is an honor to know you both. Thank you.
The honor is mutual, and thank you for having us.
For sure. Listeners and viewers, you are going to want to learn more about Funke Michaels and Absa Gningue, and their book, Modern Leadership Inspired by Mother Nature. To get acquainted, I want you to go to their website. It's womenwisdomnature.com. womenwisdomnature.com. You can find both of them on LinkedIn as well. So check them out. Last week, if you missed the live show, you can always catch it via recorded podcast wherever you get yours. We were on air with Rich Fernandez and Carolina Lasso talking about their book, Purpose Reset, how connecting to what matters most drives fulfillment and performance. We talked about how individuals, teams, and organizations benefit from a purpose reset to align what they are good at, why they do it, and who they wish to impact. Next week, we'll be on air with Wendy Lipton-Dibner talking about her book, What Matters Most, How Leaders Build Impassioned Engagement, Unrivaled Loyalty, and Boundless Growth by Measuring Real-World Impact. In other words, her message and book are about enabling leaders to help individual team members see the through line of their performance and contribution to what really matters to them. See you then. Remember, work is one of the best adventures and means of realizing our potential and making the impact we crave, and can give us the opportunity to do business that betters the world. So let's work on purpose.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's program. Be sure to tune into Working on Purpose, featuring your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, each week on W4CY. Together, we'll create a world where business operates conscientiously, leadership inspires impassioned performance, and employees are fulfilled in work that provides the meaning and purpose they crave. See you there. Let's work on purpose.